Hello and welcome to our webinar, Enterprise Class Solutions with Qlik. My name's McEwan. I'm a principal consultant, having been with Thorogood for over 20 years, so plenty of experience in the business intelligence and analytics. Joining me today for this presentation is Mike Van Song from our US office, and we will pass the ball seamlessly across the Atlantic between Mike and myself. To touch upon the objectives for today's session, Objective 1, highlight enterprise reporting solutions using QlikView and Qlik Sense. Wherever we can, we like to pass back to the market some of that high experience we have with building enterprise solutions in a global market. Secondly, illustrate the value of integrating established enterprise systems with user-driven data. We're seeing more and more business-driven nature of reporting, the need to fit in with business processes and business driving IT more and more. So many examples, IT becoming more of a support to the business. So passing back some examples there of our experience. And finally, discuss ways to overcome common challenges with adoption and scalability. And we'll do that through some descriptions of where solutions can evolve from POC all the way through to fully productionized enterprise solutions. So how will we do that? So quick agenda, brief introduction to Thorogood. We'll then go on to almost describing the final point, or almost the final point. So what are the globalized solutions? What do we mean by that? We'll then step back and talk about how to get to global solutions. So that's really the evolutionary nature of it. We'll talk about self-service BI, and really there we're talking about it from a data provisioning aspect. So not really the self-serve reporting, the user interface side, but the data provisioning. How do you enable that data provisioning? And with IT departments wanting to provide a data provisioning role and all the governance and so on around it, how do we enable that using the Qlik platform? And then finally we'll wrap up. So having introduced our session, let's start with the content. So a piece about Thorogood. So we are business intelligence and analytics specialists. We really do position ourselves very different from the IT generalists. The specialist nature of what we do. So BI is all we do. All of our consultants are specialists with a wide pool of experience. That enables us to position small, efficient teams. That expert, small, efficient team nature means that we have a reduced amount of communication through the team. We need less communication. It means we can focus on what we're doing, and it means that everyone in our organization understands the impact and understands what makes a difference. We also apply a very business goal-oriented focus to BI. BI is about producing business results, and keeping that in mind throughout the project makes a big difference to how we deliver, and that means that we are trusted to deliver by a large number of global enterprise companies, some of which are on screen there. Our key experience is really in insurance, financial services, so financial services including insurance and banking, capital markets, but also pharmaceuticals and consumer goods. And on screen there, I won't go through them all, but an example of some of the organizations that we've been working with over the years. From a partnering perspective, we partner with clearly the major players in BI, so Microsoft, IBM, SAP, and Oracle. All the businesses that we work with have a large number of tools, and many of them include some or all of those first four. And many these days have adopted some of the more pure play tools such as Tableau, Qlik, Anaplan, Roadbee, etc. We partner with the companies we can't partner with the vendor tools that we know we can make a difference with and that our customers are demanding. Qlik is a big part of that and a big part of this presentation today. Thorogood have been partnering with Qlik for a number of years now, so since 2009, delivering many projects. And really the purpose of this session is to play back some of that experience, some of what's really changed with Qlik and how we've helped Qlik to adopt this technology and integrate in enterprise organizations' landscape very, very effectively, fitting both with the business demands for data, the business demands for evolutionary nature, and making that fit with IT's needs for governance and supporting those business processes. At that point, I'll hand over to Mike, who will start the session, Globalizing Solutions.
So those different tools that we've listed on the poll there, as we'll see over the next 45 minutes, these Qlik tools can be very valuable for enterprises looking to create globalized reporting solutions. There are a couple high-level approaches that can be taken to deliver globalized reporting solutions with Qlik, and I'll just go over both of those here. So we have on the left here a central solution. This is a Qlik application or a series of applications that are owned and maintained by a central body, usually IT. The design of the report will consider the needs of all your markets and business units, and the single solution will ultimately be rolled out to and accessed by all of your markets or business units. An enterprise could alternatively take the multiple solutions approach toward globalization, which we've diagrammed on the right here. In this case, one Qlik template is developed by the central body, not only for the purpose of consistency in the final applications, but also to decrease the time and effort required for each market to develop their version of the application. The template application can be modified to fit the specific needs of each market, and each market will ultimately utilize a different QlikView application. So two different approaches, both of which can help to achieve global consistency in the reporting and analytics of your business processes. But moving toward a global reporting solution isn't necessarily a given. There are several factors that we see that an enterprise will generally consider when deciding whether or not to invest in moving towards a global solution. So first, are your various business units or markets on a single business process? And what we found is the answer to this will usually not be entirely, but it may be mostly. And what if your business units are just mostly on a single process? Are the differences between these business processes so significant that a global solution is entirely impractical? Or can you leverage the flexibility of Qlik to account for these differences? Do your various business units use a consistent ERP or technology as their source of record? So it may be difficult to provide a globalized solution if each of your business units are storing and maintaining their source data in different systems. And next, can your various units come to enough agreement on data sourcing and reporting principles to make a global solution feasible? So there's going to have to be some alignment between the different metrics that your different business units are using in order to drive their business. Localization is a consideration. So are there differences in reporting requirements between your different regions that would need to be addressed? For example, sometimes we see that different markets within an enterprise will have sales org structures that are organized with different numbers of levels that has to be accounted for. Or maybe your different business units require reporting on varying attributes of your data's dimensionality. Maybe region A reports only on major product type, or region B reports on major and minor product type. So these type of differences will have to be considered. And then finally, you also want to consider the security of your reporting solution and how the varying regions plan to provision access to their data. As anyone with QlikView experience will probably know, QlikView does give options for security by report or at a data level. We also have a few considerations here on the right that might come up while analyzing a move to reporting globalization, but these ones we found don't usually end up factoring into the decision on whether or not to move to a globalized reporting solution. We have data latency, which usually isn't affected by a move to globalization. It's likely that your data latency for an ad hoc regional report is probably going to stay the same after a move to globalization, assuming you're not making any changes to your solution's data source. Refreshes can be scheduled as needed and on a report-by-report basis, so there's generally no need for one single global overnight refresh window. And finally, language translation can usually be handled during development of QlikView applications. Translation of report text and labels is relatively simple. Translation of the actual data in the report is a bit more development intensive, but it can be achieved as well. So these are the factors that we've seen most often play into the globalization decision. Now in this first case study that I'm going to demonstrate, I'll be showing an example of an application that we developed at a customer in the consumer packaged goods industry. We were looking to improve on a previous state in which communication between the sales and manufacturing departments was done on a very localized basis. Local sales teams were preparing forecasts each fiscal period, and these forecasts were collected by a central IT body who then analyzed each forecast and sent a report to each market's manufacturing department. The collection and preparation of these reports was time-consuming for IT, and the scattered timings at which these forecasts were made available to manufacturing made it difficult to plan production efficiently. It's costly, for example, to produce 5 million bags of barbecue potato chips, switch your manufacturing line over to start producing sour cream and onion chips, and then receive a late forecast that requires an additional 750,000 bags of barbecue. So a globalized reporting solution can help to more closely align the sales and manufacturing departments in this instance. So we're going to switch over to QlikView now. And the app that I'm opening is called Forecast Completeness, and it was designed to help globalize the customer's volume forecast reporting. It's a single QlikView application that can be used by all markets. It's centrally managed, and it is aligned to the consistent business process used by the various manufacturers at this enterprise to incorporate sales forecasts into the production planning. So we have a few tabs here that I'm going to go through. And this first tab, called Forecast Completeness, shows some of our key metrics at kind of a high level. This is a view that's kind of well suited to someone maybe at an executive or decision maker level. So we have a few text boxes on the top here. We have our total number of SKUs in our portfolio, and we'll talk about how we use some of the data in this application to get a sense of how complete our forecast is for that portfolio. We have some text boxes showing our current selections on country, category, and the current period we have selected. And then we have two key metrics that are tracked throughout this application and that are truly global metrics that we have agreement on from all regions. And the first is shown in the top left chart here. It's our forecast volume change. So our forecast volume change compares the forecasted volume in 1 month against the forecasted volume for the same month for the previous year. So if I filter down to just look at my books product line, I can see that my forecasted volume of January of this year is down about 3% from my forecasted volume from last year. And my February forecast for my current year is down about 4.6% from last year, so I'm actually trending in the wrong direction here. We're showing the same metric for future months in this bar chart. And then we have a tree plot here. It might not be immediately apparent what the size and shading of the boxes in this tree plot mean, but what we've done is create this little information button, which will bring up some information on the different charts and what they're showing. So you can see that this tree plot is the size of the block in it is showing the forecast amount, and the color is indicating that volume forecast change, that comparison between year 1 and year 2. And we can see here we have one specific brand of books, this brand 31, which is the large red rectangle on the left here. And we can see that a lot of our demand, a lot of our forecasted volume is coming from brand 31. But it looks like the year-on-year change of this volume forecast is trending in the wrong direction. Now, one reason for that could be that we just haven't received complete forecasts for this brand and for the specific products that make up this brand. And so the second key metric that we're going to track in this application is data quality. And if I bring in my information bubble again, we can see that data quality is the percentage of my SKUs which I have a complete forecast for. So it's possible that maybe we just are forecasting that our production for brand 31 is going to be down, or it's possible that our data quality isn't too good for this brand, and that's something we might be able to take immediate action on to improve. So I'm going to move to this matrix tab now to drill into that a little bit and try to find some answers. So right now I'm viewing my data quality by my just by my category, and I have my selection on books as carried over. I'm going to view it by my different brands instead. I want to drill into that brand 31. I'm going to switch my thresholds here to kind of highlight those where my data quality is less than 50%. I can see I have a couple markets where I do have pretty low data quality for this brand. So I'm going to drill in here. It looks like in my Caribbean and my North America regions, I have some specific markets where my data quality is pretty low. I can actually see that my United States and Canada markets, which I know are some of my bigger markets, actually have pretty low data quality for this brand 31. So an immediate action for me to take might be follow up with my sales teams in Canada and try to find out why I don't have complete volume forecasts for this brand. So we also have, on this next tab, we have a detailed view, and this is actually showing us kind of a more tabular, traditional format of the data. So if I want to drill into Canada to see what my actual forecast volumes are for Canada, I'll make that selection. I can see the specific volume forecasts across time. I can see them by SKU, which is the lowest level that I'm forecasting at. This report is also designed as kind of an ad hoc report, so if the user wanted to add or remove different attributes, they could. And ultimately, you can build a report that you like. You can export to Excel when it's in this format, and if you want to share it with someone who maybe doesn't have access to the QlikView application, you could do so. So maybe I'd want to find some specific SKUs in here where my volume forecasts look off, and then share it with my sales team in Canada. We also have a similar tab that shows data in traditional tabular format, but this is just calling out some of the specific SKUs that don't have a forecast. or to have an incomplete forecast. So again, something I might want to export to Excel if my Canada sales team doesn't have access to this QlikView application, and try to follow up with them on these specific products. And then finally, something we do in a lot of our QlikView applications is include an how-to tab, and this is just used to provide users with some general guidelines in interacting with QlikView, things like what is green versus gray versus white mean in the context of a filter box and things like that. So this is an example of an application which actually started as a QlikView application template. Eventually, it evolved into something that allowed for the analysis of relatively simple but global metrics, which means its reporting value isn't only limited to one or two markets in which our enterprise does business. Originally, it was actually just rated by one region. That what we did was we actually provided templates to the business, which gave them kind of a starting point for creating a QlikView application. So the first benefit of developing an app template is that they help to establish coding and branding conventions and consistency. They also have a second, maybe less obvious advantage of encouraging users to dive right into connecting to data and beginning analysis, rather than being forced to spend the initial time and effort on setting up a QlikView application report layout. So as you'll see in this example I'm about to show, these templates can still leave plenty of room for users to make the application their own, as they did in the case of this forecast completeness app that I showed a couple minutes ago. So this QlikView app template, I mean, you'll see right away, it looks very similar to the forecast completeness app that I just showed. And all we've done is just provided users with a pretty simple layout. They can put filters here on the left, an area for them to put their charts and visualizations. We've included a couple examples of the help bubbles that I showed on the first tab of the last report. If I switch to the second tab, we've actually given them a couple different layouts that they can choose from. So this one puts all the filters up top and leaves a little more room here for some combination of charts and visualizations. And something we also usually do is include a template reference page, which ultimately is meant to serve as kind of a business glossary and encourages users as they pull data into their application to document where that data is coming from and how it's being used within the application. So again, just to recap, creating a starter application template like this will allow users to leverage structured elements that establish coding and branding standards, all while helping users do more quickly what they actually want to do, which is get to the point where they're able to load and explore their data. So I'm going to switch back to PowerPoint now. So we showed an example of a forecast completeness application that would be considered a global solution. It provided some high-level aggregations of metrics that are aligned to business processes across all markets. And now I'm going to talk a bit about how the enterprise moves toward the point where they're actually able to implement global solutions like these. The data sources that a business will pull from to create a reporting solution are going to vary in their strength and stability. There will be structured data with proven value and quality housed in enterprise data warehouses. There's also likely to be unstructured and unregulated ad hoc data, often used just for one single report or set of reports in one locality or market. An example of this would be a flat Excel file which defines the hierarchy for one market's individual sales org structure. However, just because the data in the latter scenario is used ad hoc and not regulated does not mean it has no reporting value. It very well may have significant reporting value, especially when coupled with more robust data from an enterprise data warehouse. Finally, in the middle here, we have our Agile data store. And this is a somewhat hybrid approach between the traditional EDW and ad hoc data storage. Although it doesn't provide the type of regulation and guaranteed quality that an EDW provides, it can apply some structure and regulated processes to data while maintaining some of the same flexibility that makes ad hoc data storage attractive to some users. It can also be used to combine data from both structured and unstructured sources. So often the Agile data store will be the appropriate first step towards a global reporting solution. And it's in the development of these Agile data stores where we think the Qlik toolset can be very valuable. So in traditional BI, the Agile data store might be achieved by the implementation of relational data mart. And in this scenario, in this diagram here, we use tool 1 to load data from our various data sources into our relational data mart, which we've developed in tool 2. Tool 3 is then used to build a reporting or semantic metadata layer on top of this relational data mart. And then tool 4 is used to load data from the metadata layer into a reporting interface, which is ultimately presented to the user. There may be some overlap between the different tools that are used, but this general approach is sure to require development and maintenance across a variety of technologies. Now consider the development of an Agile data store with Qlik. So we can do the extract of data from the sources, any transformation and metadata changes to the data for reporting, and loading of the data into the reporting front end, all with one tool, QlikView. Now, we may choose to use multiple QlikView workbooks to achieve an Agile data store, maybe one to load data into a QVD extract layer, and another to transform the extracts and load them into a QlikView front-end application. But it can all be done with one tool. We can combine data from EDW and ad hoc sources and apply some regulation and structure to it as it's loaded into an extract layer. Again, all with one tool. And by using this approach, it's relatively easy compared to the traditional BI approach to achieve an Agile data store that will allow for some globalized reporting solutions. And really, as this slide shows, it doesn't have to be a choice between traditional BI or Qlik. Data from a traditional relational data mart could be incorporated into our Qlik data store as well. The evolution of this type of solution may take some time, and if the goal is ultimately to have all data stored in a structured relational data mart, but the exact requirements of this database are not known or finalized, it may make sense to start by loading data into a QlikView extract layer. This will allow for reporting flexibility as reporting requirements mature. QlikView application development could move forward while the design and development of the data mart structure and processes are finalized. And when those reporting requirements are finalized, this QlikView extract layer, which is shown kind of in the middle here, can then be adjusted to load from the new relational data mart. And in this case, there'd be no change to the report that users would see on the front end, and you've implemented a relational data mart without holding up the development of the actual reporting applications that your users are going to be so eager for. And we think that the role that Qlik can play in this evolution of an Agile data store is pivotal, and it's a role that most BI tools are not suited to fill. Now, we've been referring to the Qlik toolset, understanding that this can refer to both QlikView and Qlik Sense, which are both shown on the right-hand side of this diagram. QlikView makes sense as an ETL tool in an Agile data store. Its scripting language is very flexible, and QlikView workbooks can be scheduled to reload via QlikView Publisher on a regular basis. For example, maybe you reload your data extract layer every day at 12 a.m. Eastern. We've also seen in these demos that QlikView applications can allow for powerful reporting and analytics. So where does Qlik Sense fit in, and what's the use case for Qlik Sense? Now let's assume we've moved through the evolution discussed in the past couple slides, and our data sources are well established. We've built a QVD extract layer as our Agile data store, and now, as diagrammed here, we have the option to leverage this QVD layer with either QlikView or Qlik Sense. We can use QlikView workbooks to do further ETL on the data and then present it in a front-end QlikView application. Or we can use a Qlik Sense QVF file to easily pull in data from the QVDs and create a Qlik Sense report. Qlik Sense allows for the loading of data with really little to no Qlik back-end scripting knowledge, and it provides a very intuitive interface for building reports. So I'm going to actually open up a Qlik Sense app to try to demonstrate this. So I'll switch now over to my Qlik Sense desktop hub. And I have here a test application, which actually just has a little data loaded into it. So I've previously loaded some data on my different brands into this application. And ultimately, what I have is some fact data that's being used by my theoretical enterprise managing a global supply chain. This data is going to be meant to provide insight into the relationship between customer demand and the inventory in stock at our company's various supply warehouses. So I have one of these fact files here, and this one's just in Excel format, so this might be in more of an ad hoc data scenario. But we can see that loading data into a Qlik Sense application can be as easy as just dragging and dropping the file that you want to load into the Qlik Sense data manager. Qlik Sense will give you a preview of the data. You can rename columns if you want. And then we can just load data and finish. Qlik Sense will quickly load the data in. And then if we know that we have common fields between our two tables that we've loaded in here, so we have data on our different brands coming from a relational database, and we also have the flat file of fact data that I just loaded in. I know these both have brand key on them. So something new in Qlik Sense 3.0, which was actually just released last week, is the ability to pretty easily create associations on these fields. So I'm just going to use this associations interface to do that. Qlik Sense has recognized that my brand key is common between my two fields. If I wanted an association on a custom field, I could. But now when I start to create an application on top of this data, if I make a selection on brand, it's going to filter my fact data accordingly. So I'm going to switch back to my Qlik Sense desktop hub now, and what we've done in this inventory analysis application, which I'll open, is actually use that exact same fact data that I just loaded in, but we've kind of we've flushed out the loading, and we've actually pointed this Qlik Sense application to a QVD extract layer. So all the fact data is stored in QVDs. And we've built this application on top of it, and I'll just run through what's in this application a bit. Again, as I mentioned, this is kind of an inventory management application for an enterprise managing a global supply chain. So just like in our last application, we have this executive dashboard report, which shows kind of a high-level view of some of the key metrics in our report. I'm going to select my most recent date. We're defining an out-of-stock event within this application, the situation where we have an order for product A in a market that currently doesn't have the supply to meet that demand for product A. So that's how we're going to be tracking out-of-stock or low-stock events throughout this application. And we show that metric by our different product lines here. In a bar chart, we're showing some high-level trends of our out-of-stock events compared to our total order quantity over time. We have a couple of key KPIs here, our average customer order and our total out-of-stock count. And we're also showing some of the same data in a map view here. And what the size of these bubbles is showing the total order volume in that market, while the color is giving us a sense of our stock gap in that market. Geo-mapping of data in Qlik Sense 3.0 has actually improved a lot, so it's become a lot easier to create a visualization like this, and you don't actually have to do any custom back-end QlikView scripting in order to map data to geographic locations and create a view like this. So I might be interested in looking at my Asia market, where a lot of my demand is. And I can see pretty quickly that my China market in particular looks like there's a pretty significant stock gap between what's being ordered and what I have on hand to supply those orders. So I might want to drill into that a little bit. One last feature that's new in Qlik Sense 3.0 that I just want to call out is the global search filter. So I click on this little magnifying glass here, and if I know that I want to look for visualizations that are showing data for China, I'll just type China. It's going to search my whole application, all sheets within my application, for visualizations that are showing me data about my China market. So I'll view this tree chart here, and this has brought me over to my regional analysis tab. This is showing me, probably as expected, that China is my largest market within Asia. But it's also showing me something interesting, is that there's one particular customer that's driving a lot of that demand within China. So I might want to drill into that customer a bit. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to move to my out-of-stock analysis tab. We can see that this customer, they've got a lot of demand, but there's actually a pretty significant percentage of that demand that's low in stock and that I'm in danger of not being able to meet. I have one specific supplier here that seems right now to be trying to meet most of the demand for this customer. But if I just select my low stock data, I can see I have a few specific brands here, my Harry Potter and my Acquire brands, that actually have a lot of orders that are low in stock right now. So an immediate action I might need to take is either ramp up production of the products that are making up these brands at this supplier, or find, if the supplier is at capacity, find other suppliers that can help me to meet that demand. I also just switch quickly to this out-of-stock data, which again, similar to what we saw in the QlikView application, this provides a more tabular view of my data, something that I could export to Excel and share with someone who might not have access to this Qlik Sense application. And this is actually showing me the specific material codes which I might want to ramp up production for in order to meet more of my demand. So just to recap, this is an example of a Qlik Sense application that is leveraging some fact data within an Agile data store. The Agile data could theoretically be created using QlikView as an ETL tool. It combines this Agile data store with some dimensional data from a separate database. And the app can now be easily shared either locally to others with Qlik Sense Desktop, or it can be posted to Qlik Sense Server to share with others in my organization. I'm now going to pass back to Al, who's going to finish up by discussing some ways in which QlikView can be used to develop and promote a self-service BI environment within your enterprise. Al?
Thank you. So we're going to talk a bit about self-service BI from a data provisioning perspective. We talked earlier about how business demands are driving IT more. How does IT support that? How does the business make those requests? And how does IT manage to provide the governance and management and data quality of those requests and of that data to satisfy the business needs? So this is where we've got a fair bit of experience of using Qlik to enable some of these capabilities, some of which are not necessarily available out of the box. So let's start with the data provisioning. With business demanding data, we're seeing IT moving to more of a data provisioning enabler. So IT is best to understand the data structures that are held within the data warehouses that obviously they built, within the ERP structures, within the other internal applications around the business. So IT is well placed to perform the ETL to create the Qlik layer, the Qlik data layer, and that's represented there by the 4 QVDs, and clearly there'll be a lot more than that, QVDs that are created. Those QVDs can be created in such a way that the joins are already present, so the business doesn't have to spend time aligning data. All the mappings are all done in the background. And they can also be created such that the technical names, technical fields that you might see as part of connecting to a data warehouse are removed, and therefore enabling a better business understanding of how to pull that data in. More than that, IT can also create pre-created data models, and that's represented by the Qlik mart on the lower left-hand side in the diagram. The Qlik data mart, meaning that the data has already been loaded and joined, and the business is connecting to a predefined data model, so therefore they're just involved with the reporting on that data, leaving the reporting self-serve from the business. As Mike has just shown, the business has the ability to connect to those predefined data sets, but also with a tool like Qlik Sense, and with more knowledge, QlikView, but typically more Qlik Sense, the business can add to, augment that data through perhaps file loads. And those file loads, Qlik Sense has moved to be a much more business-friendly, you don't see the technicalities of joining data, so Qlik Sense is helping the business to bring the data in and combine it with the IT-managed data. So Qlik through QlikView and Qlik Sense is moving to enable this IT provisioning, business owning and managing of that data much more appropriately going forward. So how did the business get to that stage? What are the processes to be able to get to that? Well, imagine if you would, that the business would have a list of what are the metrics that are available. What are the metrics that perhaps the business KPIs that we need to be able to report on? A list of metrics that they can then browse, select the metric that they want to view, and if they don't find the metric they want, they can submit a request to IT. If they do find the metric they want, perhaps they can understand what else comes with that metric. Is it the right metric? What's the dimensionality of that metric? And if they don't have permission to that data set, the workflow will enable them to click a link to request access. The workflow then managing the request process, pass that request to an owner who reviews it and accepts it or rejects it. Once accepted, the workflow will then provide the permission automatically and the location of that request. Tools such as Microsoft SharePoint are very appropriate for enabling that workflow, automating that process of the business understanding what's available and requesting information, requesting data when it's not yet available. And there are other tools, but Microsoft SharePoint is an option for that. So managing the data provisioning is something that's is very well enabled through workflow. Another part of that is the data quality and understanding the data quality. Now, IT should play a very big part of the role of reviewing data quality and reporting on the data quality, and then what we often see is it's the business's responsibility for owning that data, owning the data quality. So how does IT, within a Qlik environment, how does IT understand and best report on that data quality? Well, there's nothing out of the box, but through some simple management processes, some development guidelines, some standards amongst the Qlik data provisioning, we can automate that. That automation can take the form of looking at where you've got missing reference data. That's obviously a very common one through BI. where you've got missing reference data in terms of reference data relationships, so across reference data, missing hierarchical relationships, perhaps new attributes being added, new products being added that are not yet formed part of the business hierarchy. So it can look at those relationships, but it can also look at totals. It can look at top-level totals and make sure that the calculations you're doing from source to destination are valid from the perspective of you're not losing data along the way. The top-level data will still match. The record counts perhaps still match. Values fit within a value range, what your expected ranges of the data. So if you can write down the business rules for it, then Qlik can automate the process of looking at that data and understanding and reporting on where data quality is missing. Another governance topic often referred to and requested by IT is understanding the data lineage, and that can actually even be a business need. So when the business see that a metric is being reported on in one place, they want to create some reports. They want to get to the same metric. They want to get to the same source of that data. They also want to understand, where did that data come from? Now, I'm putting my data into system A, and I see this report out of report X. Is that the same data? Is it going through some odd path, or am I seeing data that's perhaps arrived from a different source or merged with another data source? So understanding the lineage, the provenance of that data can be very useful to the business. And certainly IT is very responsible with their data governance hat on, with their data provisioning hat on, needs to understand that data lineage. Again, we've seen and we've been able to create tools within Qlik. This is not something that comes out of the box with Qlik. We know that with Qlik Sense, Qlik is looking at how they can better enable data governance and data lineage. But right now, this is a capability that we can enable with QlikView and Qlik Sense. And it's done applying some standards to the ETL process within Qlik. So let's show an example of where we've done that. I'm going to switch here to QlikView. So within a QlikView environment, we typically use QlikView for our creating and provision of QVDs. It's a more IT-friendly environment for doing that. So how we have here a QlikView application that is a business-facing application. This is our data catalog. I refer back to a couple of slides ago. This is our data catalog showing all of the, this is a QlikView term, so a technical term really, QVD files. So we've got a whole bunch of QVD files. I've got a list of about 70-odd QVD files in there, but in an enterprise organization, that could be well upwards of that. How do we find the data that we want? And often you'll get duplications. You may get versions of forecast or versions of product hierarchies or versions of sales information. How do you know which is the right one you want? How do you find where all the forecast files are? Well, QlikView has a native built-in search capability that allows you to search across all fields. So if I simply type in forecast, we're seeing where forecast exists amongst a number of fields. So here we can see we've got a couple of QVDs with forecast, with involved forecast. We've got extract information, transform information, and we've got fields that include the word forecast within them. So what do we want? Perhaps we want to look at this file. Does this file hold the data that we're looking for? All of the information within these fields is automated. So there's nothing that's input, there's nothing that's managed through the business having to, or for IT having to enter this information. It's automated by looking up at the QVDs and understanding what data is held within those QVDs and when was it last updated. So is that the file we want? Well, let's move to the next step. Let's go and have a look at the fields within that file. Here we can see a transform QVD has forecast amounts by product codes, by forecast types, etc. Yeah, that looks like it's probably what I want, but I really can tell by looking at the data. So let's look at the sample data. And this application, we've said, well, let's just load the first 10 columns. That's an figure N we've picked out of the air, could be anything, the first 100 rows. And now we can have a look at the sample data within that file. Is this the data I want? I can perhaps say I only want to look at these first few fields. Let's maybe add one more. Yeah, okay, that's the data I want. Let's take that one away. That's the data I want. Now I want to create my own application and pull that in. So let's move across to generate script. And this is the script. So it's automatically built the script for us, telling us where the data is loaded from and enabling us to pull in that data from Qlik into our own self-serve, self-provisioned Qlik application. So it doesn't do everything for you, but it helps you to understand what is available and how to get to that data. The next step perhaps might be to understand the data lineage. Where does that data come from? So I've identified a QVD that I want to pull this transform forecast information. Where did that data come from? Is this the right place? So we've built in here a data lineage capability, and this is all automated through some simple standards, some best practices. This is all automated across your Qlik environment. So we can see that with this QVD as the center of our attention, this QVD is created by this Qlik ETL, and it's created by that ETL from a number of QVDs. And then this is the destination, perhaps multiple destinations. Well, okay, where did this QVD come from? If we click on that QVD, that becomes the center of our attention, and we can see that through this Qlik ETL, it comes from a number of files. It comes from 19 files, in fact, and let's scroll down through those files to see the list of files that it comes from. Let's go back to and make the transform the center of our attention again, and we've got there was a second source here. So let's click on that, and where did that come from? That again came from a file. It could be a database, in this case it comes from a file. So through a very simple reporting process, we've enabled the user to select a QVD, click on that QVD, and understand the source and destination for each of those data sets, so that as a business user, we can make sure we're picking the information that we were particularly looking for. Switch back to the slides and just summarize the session, what we've been looking at today. So we're looking at globalization. What does it take from a Qlik environment to get to globalization? Firstly, what do we mean by globalization? Are we deploying a single solution where all the data from all markets or all business units is sent into a single solution and everyone globally is accessing a single solution? Can we create that? Is that appropriate? What are the limitations to enabling us to do that? Because there's benefits to that versus having multiple solutions. Or if we can't enable a single solution, what does it mean for creating multiple solutions? If you can template those, then you're at a better level of success in terms of being able to manage the changing nature of those solutions as you go forward. And that's another decision you have to make. Do you enable each local market to evolve their separate solutions and therefore end up with 50 different types of solutions potentially globally? Or do you stick within a more templated approach and not allow that divergence? And one of the key questions there is the level of consistency of the business processes and of the reporting processes, I guess. So a couple of examples of globalization and the value that templates and development guidelines can apply to that. We also described an approach that enables you to get to those global solutions and the agile approach that Qlik helps to provide. So by feeding your data into a Qlik-only solution without a database, better enables you to evolve that solution, better enables you to understand the business needs and requirements and stabilize those requirements before you then go and build the database that supports that data. Finally, we talked a bit about how do you enable self-service from a governance and data provisioning perspective. How do you enable IT to manage the data quality and the data lineage while still enabling the business to help themselves in their desire to get to data? We certainly see a lot more of that happening within the organizations that we work with. So I hope that was useful. I hope that we've managed to cover off these three objectives. So highlighting consumer goods demonstrations using QlikView and Qlik Sense. So hopefully we've taken you through the few examples and they were valuable for the examples of what we built with other customers. Secondly, illustrating the value of integrating established enterprise systems with user-driven data. And finally, showing some of the ways to overcome some common challenges with adoption and scalability. I hope this was a useful webinar. Thorogood has plenty of services that enable you to understand how this applies to your organization, so feel free to reach out to us. And we have a number of other events coming up that may be of interest, some within Qlik and some within other technologies, and some of those shown on screen there. Some of those will be in-person events, and where they're in-person, it states the location, and some of those will be webcasts. Hope that was useful. So if you have any questions, then please feel free to post them to the forum or send them to us on an email. Thank you for your time.